Pull hard, lads, mind the hot metal. Watch the chain. Heave ho, together. Move it out. More coal, keep the furnace hot.
As you watch these historic scenes, imagine the heat, the noise, and the skill it took to keep a railroad running in the 1800s. Foundries melted iron in massive furnaces, poured it into sand molds, and shaped it into wheels, axles, brake shoes, couplers, and hundreds of custom parts. Nothing was mass-produced. Every piece was crafted by hand, one at a time. Welcome to the Southern Railroad Museum. We'll discover the foundry, then the general itself up close. We'll step into the erecting shop, explore how engines were built, and read the story behind the process.
The latest in furnace technology, because it uses electricity to melt iron. This furnace is still in use at a foundry in Cordele, Georgia, making it the oldest continuously operating electric steel furnace in the country. The casting process begins as an overhead conveyor lifts the mold assembly over to the casting area in front of the furnace, where other molds are already lined up, ready to be filled with molten steel.
Were the parts for the General created by this shop?
No. They were cast, machined, and fitted in the Western and Atlantics on Atlanta shops.
From the very beginning, the General belonged to the Western and Atlantic Railroad, a railroad owned by the state of Georgia. It wasn't a private company engine. It was a state-run locomotive built to serve Georgia's main line between Atlanta and Chattanooga, which is why it played such a big role in the Great Locomotive Chase. During the Civil War, Atlanta had two major ironworking centers, the Atlanta Rolling Mill and the Western and Atlantic Railroad shops, while North Georgia added another half-dozen furnaces and foundries in the Etowah and Rome regions. Together, these sites formed one of the Confederacy's most important industrial corridors. As you look at these wooden patterns, remember they're the very first step in making an iron part. A craftsman carved each one by hand, then pressed it into sand to form the mold for molten iron. During the Civil War, Georgia relied on a whole network of ironworks to keep its railroads and army supplied. Atlanta had the big ones, the Western and Atlantic Railroad shops and the Atlanta Rolling Mill. But the state's industrial backbone stretched far beyond the city. Up in North Georgia, the Etowah, Cooper, and Cherokee Iron Works were producing pig iron and castings. Farther south, major sites like the Macon and Columbus Iron Works turned out everything from railroad parts to cannons and naval machinery. Together, these foundries formed one of the Confederacy's key industrial corridors, and the patterns you see are the kind of tools craftsmen used to shape the iron that kept the South's railroads moving.
I'm curious, are the iron ore molds made out of wood first?
The actual molds were made of sand, and the pattern was made of wood. To understand, the sand mold, not the wood, received the molten iron.
Ah, now I get it.
The electric arc between the electrodes generates intense heat that rapidly melts the iron and steel pieces.
In those carts. Whoa. Heave it up, boys! Mind the rock there, Jim.
Where did Atlanta get the iron ore from?
Got it from nearby counties and were able to source it quickly.
And long before Birmingham's iron trains rolled east, the Etowah Valley was already known as the Hills of Iron. Industrialist A.O. Granger helped turn those hills into one of the South's earliest iron centers, supplying iron ore and castings that fed Atlanta's growing railroads. It's that same ironworking tradition we've been following through the foundry and into the erector shop, where raw ore became the parts that kept America's railroads moving. As a historical side note, because the General belonged to the Western and Atlantic Railroad from the day it was built, all of its early repairs and maintenance were handled in the W&A's own shops here in Atlanta. Those facilities included a foundry, but it's important to remember that 19th century foundries did not have electric arc furnaces or electric power of any kind. Everything was done with coal-fired cupola furnaces, steam power, and a tremendous amount of hand labor. Workers created wooden patterns, packed sand molds, melted iron in the cupola, and poured it by hand into molds. Machinists then shaped the rough castings on steam-driven lathes and planers, and crews in the erecting shop assembled the finished parts onto the locomotive frame. This is the kind of traditional, labor-intensive shop work that kept the General running throughout the 1800s, long before electricity transformed industrial manufacturing. During the Civil War, these foundries became even more critical. Locomotives were damaged, sabotaged, and pushed to their limits. The foundry kept them running, including the engines involved in the Great Locomotive Chase.
Stop the train! Grab my hand quickly! On! Hurry, get on!
How did the raiders actually manage to steal a whole locomotive in broad daylight?
They stole the General during a breakfast stop at Big Shanty.
Was it okay for the raiders to steal the General? In peacetime, no. But the real reason they stole the General was purely military. The Western and Atlantic was the Confederacy's main supply line, and the raiders planned to race north, destroying track, bridges, and telegraph lines. Their goal was simple: cut the South's lifeline and make Chattanooga fall. Were the raiders successful? Not really. They caused some damage, but they never reached Chattanooga, the bridges didn't burn, and every man was eventually caught. Their plan was bold, but the mission itself failed.
The General left Atlanta and stopped at Big Shanty. But where is that today?
The General left Atlanta at 4 a.m. on Saturday, April 12, 1862, and stopped in what is now known as Kennesaw.
As we zoom in on Atlanta, remember this is where the chase began, and where the South's rail network and iron industry were anchored. The General was stolen just north of here in 1862, and every mile on this map traces the route that sparked one of the most daring pursuits in railroad history.
Now that we know the history, how was the train put together with the parts from the foundry?
The parts cast in the foundry were finished in the machine shop and assembled in the erector shop.
Roads alive.
After cooling, the casting is ready for the machine shop to be cleaned and ground.
Engines broke down constantly. Parts wore out. Without a foundry, trains simply stopped. So when you see this foundry exhibit at the Kennesaw Railroad Museum, you're looking at the industrial backbone of the Western and Atlantic Railroad, the place where iron, fire, and human skill kept America's early railroads alive. But the foundry was only the beginning. Once the wheels, axles, and cast iron parts were poured and shaped, they were carried next door to the erector shop, the massive workshop where locomotives were assembled, repaired, and brought back to life. This is where those freshly cast parts found their purpose, bolted onto frames, fitted into running gear, and installed on engines like the General. The foundry made the pieces. The erector shop made them work. Here at the Southern Museum, you'll find a small but fascinating locomotive, the Splint Jellicoe Coal Company No. 3. Built in 1926 by the Glover Machine Works, it was meant for a coal company that couldn't pay for it. So the builder took it back and kept it for over 70 years before it finally came here to be preserved. Beside it sits the disassembled chassis of an unfinished locomotive, showing exactly how engines were built from the frame up. Together, they give us a rare look at the earliest stages of locomotive construction, long before the boiler, cab, and running gear ever came together. Here in the erecting shop, the parts cast in the foundry finally came to life. Machinists first cleaned and finished each piece, shaping it to precise measurements. Then crews lifted heavy components, wheels, axles, rods, and boiler fittings, into place using overhead cranes and hand-powered hoists. Workers bolted parts onto the locomotive's frame, aligned the running gear, and connected the rods that turned steam power into motion. Here is a summary of the storyboard. Building a locomotive was truly a labor-intensive undertaking. Every part of the engine began as a hand-crafted wooden pattern, used to form the sand molds that shaped the iron and steel castings. When those castings came out of the mold, they were rough and unfinished, and machinists spent hours at lathes, planers, and drills cutting each piece to exact measurements. In the erecting shop, teams of craftsmen lifted the finished parts into place, aligning wheels, rods, cylinders, and the boiler on the locomotive's frame. Blacksmiths forged fittings, boilermakers riveted steel plates, and carpenters built the cab and wooden components. Dozens of skilled workers touched every inch of the engine, and thousands of hours of coordinated effort went into each locomotive before it ever rolled out of the shop. This is the Atlanta Rolling Mill, built in 1858 just outside what is now Oakland Cemetery. Before the Civil War, it quickly rose to become one of the South's most productive ironworks. During the conflict, its furnaces turned out cannon, iron rails, and thick armor plating, including the heavy iron sheets used to clad the Confederate ironclad CSS Virginia. For a time, it was one of the Confederacy's most vital industrial assets. But in 1864, as Union forces advanced on Atlanta, the mill was destroyed, ending its role in the war and leaving only its story behind.
Did the Atlanta rolling mill melt iron ore? Was it a foundry?
No, this is where red hot iron bars were pressed into new parts.
Okay.
Once we understand that this was a rolling mill, not a foundry, we can see why it became such a critical target in 1864. As Union forces closed in on Atlanta, Confederate Commander John Bell Hood ordered his own men to destroy anything the Union might capture. That included the rolling mill. During the evacuation, Confederate cavalry set fire to 81 ammunition railcars sitting beside the mill. The explosions that followed were so powerful they leveled the entire complex. It wasn't Sherman who destroyed the mill. It was the Confederates themselves, trying to deny the Union one of the South's last major industrial lifelines. But the story doesn't end in the ashes. Over generations, the South rebuilt, first its railroads, then its cities, and finally its identity. Today the South is one of the fastest-growing, most influential regions in America, leading the nation in business, culture, military service, and a deep, steady belief in God and country. The old stereotypes faded, replaced by a region known for resilience, hospitality, and faith that carried families through hardship and into hope. And now, as we step from the 1800s into the modern era, we see how far that journey has taken us. Where steam once powered line shafts and belts, electric motors now drive the lathes, drills, and machinery that shape our world today. The technology changed, but the spirit of hard work, ingenuity, and faith that built the South never did.
Wow, we've certainly learned a lot about the 1800s, but why are there electric motors at the museum?
It's telling the story of the Glover Machine Works, the foundry, and the evolution of railroad industry over time.
So now that you understand how essential the foundry was in those early labor-intensive days, let's jump forward in time and look at the electric motor that powered the lathes and other machinery in later years. This technology came much later, but it completely transformed how shops like this work. This is Westinghouse electric motor, a 30-horsepower direct current motor built around 1910. It was designed to run at a constant speed of about 975 RPMs, delivering smooth, reliable power for industrial machinery. The Glover Machine Works purchased this motor from the Gillum Electric Company in Atlanta, which served as a regional agent for Westinghouse. Motors like this were essential in early 20th century manufacturing. They powered lathes, drills, saws, and other heavy equipment used to build and repair locomotives. Before diesel engines and modern electrics, shops depended on motors like this to keep production moving. It's a reminder of how electricity transformed the railroad, bringing precision, consistency, and power to places that once relied on steam belts and line shafts. As we continue our walk through the museum, we pass a lantern that once burned whale oil for fuel. Its thick glass globe made it windproof, giving railroad workers a steady light no matter the weather. This is the Central of Georgia, city of Macon replica, a beautifully detailed model of one of the railroad's classic passenger trains, and this green baggage cart once carried luggage and express freight at small depots, rolled by hand across the platform to meet arriving trains. Lastly, the telegraph was the railroad's first instant communication system. Operators tapping out Morse code to send train orders that kept everything moving safely and on time. And as we walk toward the General, I'm reminded that just as those signals guided every train, God's voice guides our steps today. Steady, clear, and always right on time. Iron-shaped, engines rebuilt, lives changed. And just like these rails and locomotives were guided along their tracks, God guides us along ours. As we step back into the world outside, may we walk with the same steady hope, knowing He goes before us and leads us every mile. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this walk through history, please like and subscribe to the channel. And may God bless you and guide you on every mile of your journey.